We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin.
Throws toward the corner of the end zone. It is intercepted! Intercepted! The Ducks have the ball!
To the end zone! Touchdown, Oregon! Mariota dives! Touchdown! They hand it off straight out! C.J. Burdell wins the game for Oregon!
Inside the 10! A hat-trick, a touchdown from Justin Herbert! Howard's going to run for it. Time runs out, and that'll do it! Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon! They storm the field at Autzen!
Welcome, Duck fans. I am Travis Rooke-Ley, Director of Content at Ducks Rising. Excited to be joined on the Ducks Rising Alumni Corner today with our first guest, Marcus Harper, newly minted, one of our own, former Oregon offensive lineman, now joining the Ducks Rising Alumni Board and also going to be a contributor with us here at Ducks Rising. Marcus, Big Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you for having me on, and appreciate you guys for adding me to the Ducks Rising team.
Of course. Love to have it. We'll just hop right into it right away. Obviously, a Chicago guy coming all the way to the West Coast to Oregon. What was that recruitment like for you? What about Oregon stood out? And kind of give Duck fans a little look into, how you made it out to Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when I even talk about my journey from Chicago to Eugene because, like most people know, Duck fans and every person that's on the West Coast, when you go recruiting talent, it's mostly the time, West Coast dominant. I just remember, I was working out one time with one of my trainers out in Chicago, and I get a call from Alex Mariball, and my only know, I know of Oregon, I know the flashy uniforms and things like that, but never in a thousand years did I think, oh yeah, they're about to offer me. I kind of said it blindly like my freshman year when I first started playing ball, but never really expanded on the idea much as I started, growing in the sport. So Alex Mirabal called me, introduces himself as offensive line coach at University of Oregon. And I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, you're probably just gonna talk to me and say that you want me to come out to a camp. And I'm probably gonna say no just because just that whole trip to, Eugene, it's a whole package deal that I wasn't trying to do at that point in my, recruitment path. And then the call is basically coming to a close, and he's like, "Hey, we're actually giving you a full ride scholarship to University of Oregon." And I, look at my phone like, "You're lying, bro." Like, yeah, whatever. Okay, sure. And I say, "Thank you, coach." Get off the phone, and then I'm like, I just got offered to University of Oregon, and the recruitment process keeps going out for me, as it does, and from there, I originally committed to Illinois early on in my recruiting process, and um, I asked that happens, and Alex Mirabal texted me. He's like, "Hey, do you want us to continue to recruit you?" And I said, "You know what? Yeah, like I may have made a mistake or just kind of got a little bit excited and, just being consumed by that recruitment process. Let me just truly see this opportunity out for what it is." And then decommitted 3 weeks later from Illinois. And then from there, later on in the summer, I take my official visit out to Eugene, Oregon, and it was something that was really just unprecedented. It was something that really I had never seen before. I'm used to, Chicago's like a lot of power lines, a lot of skyscrapers. We got all the, big buildings. And so in Eugene, you just replace a building with a tree, and then that's how you get Eugene. And so when I went out there, I just fell in love with like the atmosphere that Oregon provide, the ability for me to really come out here and really just discover myself and just be and just thrown into the fire of Oregon was a program that was starting to ascend a little bit, at least in the Cristobal era, and they were leaving a lot of guys. So I was like, you know what, it wouldn't hurt. Go ahead and just go out to Oregon, and then kind of everything kind of go unfolds from there.
I love it. So yeah, obviously coming in 2020, right?
Yeah, 2020.
And obviously a little transition, so you played Mario for 2 years,
Right.
and then over to Coach Lanning for the last 3. What were some big, what was kind of that transition like for those of you that were on that roster, given that, transition phase? I know when Mario came in, he was an interim and he was on the staff prior, so I think it was a little more fluid, but you guys went through, having a coach leave and a whole new regime come in. What was that like for the players, and what kept you, from jumping in the portal or hopping somewhere else?
Yeah, I feel like for me at that point in time with, Cristobal leaving and, Landon was coming in that, swap. uh, I hadn't gotten a lot of playing time with on Cristobal when he was there. So for me, I looked at it as like, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to show a coach and a new staff and kind of lead with a better foot. Not saying I led with a bad one in the past, but you kind of trying to figure it out on your own, just fail forward essentially. And Lanning came in, and I was like, you know what, I had learned enough to make me feel confident that I had the potential to go compete for a starting spot going into the 2022 season. Even even though there were around what 16 years coming back and everyone had like draft grades and things like that, but I still felt like what, at least if I put my best foot forward, something positive will come from this. um, a few things kind of happened. Georgia game, Ryan Walk gets injured, you know the first half, and then I just remember at that time Adrian Clemens just like, all right, you up, and that's literally how it happened. And then from there I go, and my career starts off from there. So I mean, it was scary for sure, because again, you just don't know who Landon's bringing in, if he's bringing in some guys. Um, I tried my best not to really even look at all those different, external factors. It's crazy. A lot of the principles that Landon had, brought from Georgia, kind of took upon just unknowingly, when I was, just sitting back and just watching how guys move beforehand. And um, I just embraced it and was like, you know what, like, I'm gonna give my best efforts. Whatever comes from the situation is whatever comes from the situation, and it blossomed into 3-year career under the Dan Lanning era. So, nothing much for me to complain about.
It's a heck of a first game to get thrown into. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, 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 yeah. It
um,
was it was interesting.
what was if you had to, like, looking back, how would you, just from the player perspective, compare what it was like playing for Coach Cristobal to Coach Lanning? Are there some those guys more similar than we think? There's some big differences.
Mhm.
Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I've it's interesting because I know they were at different points of their career. So that comes with a different level of just intensity style. When Lanning, well, Cristobal, he had already won a Pac-12 championship, won a Rose Bowl. So his systems were already kind of in place at Oregon, and you were just seeing the Verone McKinleys, the Javon Hollands. You were kind of seeing those group of guys kind of leave out. Um, and so me as a younger guy, I was just trying to figure out, okay, what has worked for them so that way I can implement it in my own scenario and kind of just take suit from there. Lannon is a lot younger than Cristobal, so he was a lot more relatable to us when he did come in. Uh, there would be times like during practices, like, it's cold outside and he's taking off his shirt, so he's a little bit more personable with us for sure. Um, but also Landon knew when to turn that switch on and like, all right, like we can all laugh, kiki, ha ha. But when it comes down to business, like this is how we're gonna tend to it. Um, but I think Landon has done a great job of even just the people that he's hired on his staff too. They're a lot, I won't say closer in age to us, but everyone is of a younger bracket for the most part. And not saying that hiring older coaches is wrong, but Landon has a good blend of like experience and newness on his staff. And so I feel like everyone was kind of learning at the same time, which made it a lot more personable. Um, and not just everyone coming in and dictating with an iron fist.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. Speaking of staff, I feel like, obviously Coach Lanning, Stein, Lupoy, stuff like that, obviously get a ton of credit and a ton of discussion. Oregon fans know who they are, and
Hmm.
know how good of coaches they are. But who do you feel like are some of the more, like, under the radar, whether it's staff, personnel people, people in the HDC, wherever, that are
Hmm.
kind of under discussed but should probably get more credit, in making this thing go?
Yeah, I would say Dante Barti is one individual. I don't know his specific role like on the defense, but just Dante Barti is like as a defensive, I would say just magician, like just his mind and how he breaks down schemes and how he's able to just it flows like he's reading a book, but he's breaking down defenses too. So I would say Dante Barti, Cameragi for sure. Um, Dude, I would say people in the recruiting department, because they've been doing a great job of bringing in some guys, whether it be from the transfer portal, because like you said, when Lanning started coming, transfer portal started being a real popular thing. And so not only do you got to still recruit high school guys, you still got to recruit some high level college guys too. And that's a lot. I've never been on that side, but I can only imagine that's a lot difficult to kind of sift through when a player's already been established at another program. Everyone in the recruiting staff. Um, I mean, it's a whole machine. Like it's kind of too many people to name, but just off of people that I thought of initially with Cameragi, Dante Barty, like, and they're on the defensive side. Um, Guys on the offensive side. I mean, Coach Cab when he was here, I know he went over across the road. Um, I mean, there are a lot of guys, and I know I'm probably I'm leaving out some unsung heroes for sure, but I mean, like everyone plays their part so well that the machine just flows like how it needs to flow. Um, so I mean, everyone up and down that roster needs their flowers respectfully.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you were talking about it earlier, and I know Coach mentioned it yesterday in his presser, like this piece of retention and how I
Hmm.
know one big piece that he talks about a lot, and the whole Oregon ecosystem talks about a lot, is the fact that Oregon hasn't lost a starter to the portal and since Lanning
Hmm.
took over. What do you like credit that to, having seen it from the inside a little bit? Is that a
Yeah.
culture thing? Is that a resources thing? Like what are they doing so right when it comes to keeping all that talent in Eugene, but also keeping players happy in an era where like it's really easy to be comparing what you're making to other players or your playing time to others. That's
Hmm.
kind of the new age world.
Yeah, I would say competition inevitably breeds success, and if you're a true competitor, you don't really, and that's whatever. That's how you view that statement. Is how you view that statement. If you're a true competitor, you'll rise to the occasion, or you'll figure out how to rise to the occasion. Um, and I feel like there have been times where, guys in that locker room that like they know the standard. Like you said, the culture is really the biggest thing, and the culture is showing itself to be successful. That's the biggest part too. Is like when you go across other programs and maybe you do kind of take a glance at like the portal and see where you could go. I know because I've done it once. I've done it once or twice. So let's just put that out there. Like, you take a look at it, whatever, and you look and you just kind of go up down the list of like these programs, and it's almost just like you take a look and you kind of do like a glance, and it's just like just the culture. You'll be dropping down in culture level, and you can't drop down in culture level, but then also breed have success. Like it just doesn't work like that, you know. So, I mean, that's kind of how I see it in essence. And I mean, like I said, the best players are gonna play. Like, uh, you know, the best players are gonna play. That's pretty much how it is.
Yeah. In terms of like the terms of NIL, deals, different stuff like that, is that I know every school kind of has a different policy when it comes to it. What was kind of the staff's messaging when it came to that, in terms of like how players talk about it, how much of a role
Yeah,
that plays like in the locker room? Did you guys have kind of clear direction around that? Was it kind of an unspoken thing, or like what were conversations like that between players?
yeah. I mean, people talked about it sparingly. I don't really think people, the people who talked about it were people who weren't focused on football. You know, um, and the people who didn't essentially were focused on football. So that's kind of been like the consensus split that I've seen more so is like if you so hyper focused on talking about this dollar amount, and yes, for a college or a high school student as early as like 18 or whatever, it is a depending on whatever you get, it is a good, jump start financially. But you also got to think though, you still have to produce number one. And then even further down the line, like if your goal is to make it to the NFL, like this piece of money that you're getting right now is literally pennies on the dollar compared to what the NFL has to offer to you. Um, so it just needs to be used a lot wisely. But like I said, the guys that focused on, oh, I'm making X, Y, and Z, I kind of have a good, mental checklist of like, okay, what your priorities are, if that's what you're leading discussions with.
Yeah, and I remember, we've done a couple interviews. We interviewed Marshall Malchow and we interviewed Tyler Dean, and both of them said like the number one thing they try to identify is like guys who are in it for the ball, and guys who love
Yeah,
ball and want to play and who love the game, believe in the culture, and like that doesn't mean money's not important to them, but it means that
right.
that's going to be the driver. And so I feel like you bring in the right guys, and some of those worries about conversations probably don't present themselves as often.
Right, yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's kind of hard to find people who are very much uh not about the bag, but truly about ball. But to your point, like ball is the money is very it has a level of importance. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say NIL is not important, but it shouldn't be the driving factor for why, effort is put in or whatever. And if it is, I mean, and if money is and it just helps you ball out, you help the program. So again, what we just preach when we were out in the locker room, just keep the main thing. Like money can't help you when you're out there playing football. So that was my biggest thing.
For sure, for sure. Want to transition a little bit to just like using your offensive line expertise a little bit and talking about last season relative to this year. I know a lot of Oregon fans this year there's some questions on the offensive line, just bringing in some new guys when they looked at the 2025 season. I know you guys last year,
Hmm.
I think it's safe to say you probably took a couple games to gel. I know those first couple
Right.
home games were probably wasn't to the standard you expected.
Right.
Um, Talk through like what that transition is like, and like what goes into the process of kind of locking into place, because I know if you compare probably your tape last year, week 1, week 2, to the rest of the season, it looked completely different. It seemed like it just took a little while to kind of get going.
Yeah. Um, I- it's just really getting comfortable with a lot of uh the newness of everything. Like we set a lot of expectations for ourselves coming into the season last year. So I felt like we were trying to overperform at times early on. And then we still did have like some matchups that just didn't, or some lineups that just didn't flow as fluidly as we did. Um, and it was just a simple, like, hey, let's everyone kind of reset. Let's go back to what we all know how to do best. You know, I offered, like, me and the shot talked and was like, bro, like, I don't even like left, like bump me over. He was like, I don't even like right. Kind of make that switch, and then it ended up being what it was. But we just had to kind of just get the bad stuff out the way early. Like I said, that I remember early on last year, like we kind of got the jitters out early, and you know it became what it became. But with this new offensive line, they're kind of in a good spot right now, and how you don't have no external expectations, which is good because now you get to set the expectation of what just Oregon offensive line play should look like, regardless of who's at left guard, who's at right guard, regardless of who was there in prior years. Um, because people are coming in with, you know, notions of, oh, everyone's left and everyone's done different things, then that leaves a big question mark as to are they going to produce the same. Your coach is the same. You're going to produce no matter who, like I said, is in those spots. So just the message is like, I know they set a high standard for themselves in that room because I know what's left over in that room. Uh, it's just about going to work daily and making that, you know, a reality. Um, and then just seeing it through, not really focusing on external validations because those never helped anyway. Uh, and just focus in and hone in and lock in on what makes all that offensive line culture in that room special. And that's what's going to give you the success at the end of the season, or let me just say during fall camp.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, obviously, anytime you're bringing in three guys from the portal, obviously talented guys, but new and continuity, obviously a key. Is that what you see as the biggest challenge anytime you're like breaking in new guys? Is just like the continuity of getting enough reps playing with the same five guys?
Yeah, because uh, continuity is very huge because it just eliminates a level of thinking. If I know naturally how a person likes to set or what their body angles are like, it alleviates. I know how to set myself up for them to be successful whether it be passing off a stunt, small little things, passing off a game, or how they like things just set up to make the line look successful. Uh, Very hard to do that. People popping in and out, getting these different things, getting different reps in at different positions. So the more they start to play with each other and will play alongside each other, the better it becomes for them to understand how one person benefits off of another person in a certain area, what works good, what needs to be tightened up a little bit. And again, that just takes reps. That's what you got practice for. That's what you got fall camp for. That's what spring ball was put in for. Um, that's what, like I said, the summer was all throughout. And it helps them out a lot. It plays a big role, and you might not see it in that moment, but over time, it does breed and show success.
Yeah. You feel like there's any like names or certain guys that you still in the program that you feel like are going to make a good jump, going to be good players moving forward? Any of those young guys you feel like ready to step up and possibly make an impact in the next year or two?
Yeah, I would like to see something from Janoris Wilson, Bryce Bolden as well, even Austin Mims. I'm trying to think who else. Kavika and Dave, they've had opportunities. I would like to see them start capitalizing off of opportunities at gaining some experience in game. I would like to see that be a lifestyle for them. And Poncho just continue to elevate to just being better in whichever way, whether it's leading vocally, um, body comp, whatever his personal thing may be. But my personal challenge would be to him to just continue to just be uncomfortable in an area like that. Because the moment you start getting comfortable in this game, and I'm not always talking about physical. I'm always talking about like I said, as a leader, as a voice of that, as really one of the elder spokesmen on that line because you've been there from the time you were a freshman to now. That is what I mean by, all right, bro, you got to get a lot more. You got to start, utilizing your seniority a lot more. Um, and yeah, just it's time for y'all to step up. Y'all done seen what it takes to be successful and breed success. You guys can't, that doesn't stop because certain people aren't in the room.
Yeah. Yep. Love that. Um, One more question just about last season. I know they asked it to Mateo the other day, and it got me thinking a little bit. Obviously, like I feel like as Duck fans and those of us who grew up in Eugene, like last season is hard for us to think about because we, on
Right.
one hand, like it was such a special season. I mean,
Yeah.
I was lucky. I was lucky enough to travel with some friends to Michigan and Wisconsin, which were like incredible environments. I'm sure
Yeah.
you guys felt the same. Like those were games we dreamed about. Ohio State, beating Penn State in the title game, and then obviously having the season kind of end abruptly to Ohio State. Like, how do you process and think about last season now that you're away from it? Is that like a success to you? Ultimately a failure? Like some of both? Where do you find
Yeah.
yourself?
Very successful. I mean, you got to take what was uh, successful in the sense of I don't know too many teams that come into their conference from a, quote unquote, weaker conference the year prior in the Pac-12, and you just take over the conference. I don't know too many people that well, Arizona State was the only other team that did that. Uh,
Yep.
Outside of that, so in that run we were successful. Now, obviously, the standard we had set for ourselves in that room was national championship because we knew we had the capabilities of doing so and getting it done. So I don't think we weren't successful in winning a national championship. Um, so it kind of just depends on how you look at it. Um, it was successful. Like I don't at 13-1 it still wasn't done throughout the landscape of college football. And there's something to be said for that. I don't write last season off as a loss for real. Um, I think if you hang your hat, you know what? You'll see if last season was a success or not by how they come out this season.
Yep.
Yeah,
I love
that
that.
because
Yeah.
because if you're hanging your hat on last year just being the pinnacle of what Oregon football will be, then you just don't know what is upcoming from Lanning, just from his staff, anybody. You know what I'm saying? Um, so this season, I feel like it's a testament to if last season was a failure or not.
Yeah. Yep. I hear that. And I feel like it the next few years will validate it in a way because
Hmm.
it for years, obviously Oregon's had incredible seasons in the last 20 years,
Right.
but there was always that asterisk of like, yeah, but you play soft football, you're in the Pac-12. So like,
Right,
I
right.
think last season put that to bed, and now, now it's about making that next step and winning that first title.
Exactly.
All right, I'm gonna get you out of here soon, but I got a few quick hitters that I
Okay.
know fans love. So we'll run through these pretty quickly. Favorite Oregon uniform you ever wore?
I would say breast cancer awareness jersey. We played versus UCLA in 2022.
Nice, love it. Most hyped locker room post game that you can remember?
I would say playing Ohio State and Alton last year was pretty lit. I'm not gonna lie to you. Just yeah, that one was pretty nice.
Yeah, for sure. Best player you ever played against?
Best player I played against, I would say Mason Graham. Yeah, Mason Graham for sure.
Beast. Um, Loudest stadium beyond Autzen?
The Husky Stadium. That one was pretty loud, especially when we went up there in 23.
You're
Yeah,
breaking my heart, but I had a feeling you were gonna say it.
yeah, no, dog. It was as a player, and I try not to give Washington too much credit for anything. Um, Rightfully so. That one, as a player, not being able to hear JPJ call out certain things, and really had to hone in and lock in on what it like the cadence. That one was I got to get my hats off to him. That one was pretty. That one was pretty loud.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
I was there.
yeah,
Not a fun
yeah,
post game.
yeah. Not a fun post
Um,
game at all.
it may be Ohio State again, but it might be something different. Just like, what's like a favorite game you ever played in, or just like a memory that's always going to stick with you throughout your playing
Yeah.
career?
Yeah, I would for sure say winning the Big Ten championship, and not be the championship was nice to hold, but just again those guys that we kept with us, they obviously guys could have left. Just looking around and looking at the guys that were invested in it, whether they were playing or not, and we were the byproducts of it. The guys that were on the field and things like that. So that I would say truly was just a moment that I just look back and I'm like, damn, that was pretty cool. That's pretty
Yep,
cool. Yeah.
yep. All right, last question. Who are obviously been in the locker room the last few years? Came across a good amount of guys still on campus. Who are a couple players you're like looking out for that you think might pop this year in the 2025 squad that are primed to make a big impact?
Yeah, Devin Jackson for sure. That's my guy. Um, Devin Jackson. I would also say Bryce Betcher. Uh, Even though they started popping on the scenes last year, I'm looking for them to really take a giant leap of right, it's time. Um, and Dante Moore. Dante Moore, me and him got real close in the last year or so. Um, and just his mentality and how he's just like real calm guy, but he a dog. I would say those three for sure. Time to turn it up.
Since you mentioned Dante, I got to ask a bonus question then, because you walked me into it. How do you compare? Like, how would you, for a Duck fan who hasn't watched much to him, how would
Mhm.
you compare him to like a Dylan Gabriel or a Bo that they've seen over the last few years? Are there like big differences in their game you feel like, or similarities, or like anything you can share on that?
Yeah, big arm ability, but Dante just has his own set of skills that just once you see him on display, he has a different flavor, different from Bo than and Dylan. Um, but he is that boy is nice. Like I said, seeing him, I'm ready to see him out in action. Yeah,
Nice.
I
Well, I'm
really am.
right there with you. Um, well, grateful to you, Marcus. Thanks for joining us today on the Ducks Rising Alumni Corner. I know we mentioned at the top you guys were going to be joining and doing some work with us. So give Duck fans a little tease of that first piece that you're working
Yeah.
on this week for Ducks Rising subscribers, and then we'll get you out of here.
Yeah, I'm just letting you guys know and giving you real personal experience, and try to get you to feel what it's like going into a fall camp from different perspectives on the depth chart, whether it be a walk-on or a returning starter, a transfer portal guy. So I really want you guys to, as best, walk this journey out with the Duck players as best as possible. So that's what I want to try to you know put you guys in that mind space as best as possible.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Well, thanks again, Marcus, for joining us. Thanks for everyone for listening and watching the Ducks Rising Alumni Corner, and we'll see you next week.